To formally open our celebration, let us give our hands to Mr. Robert Lario, Production Manager of Claritian Communications Foundation Incorporated.
It is my pleasure to welcome all of you here today on this occasion to launch the book Accidental Monk, A Chronicle of Struggle, Faith and Surrender by Mr. Wil Hernandez. Who would have thought that something so surprising could happen in the time of pandemic? Last year and even up to these days, we're experiencing fear, anger, anxiety, grief, sadness, numbness, or frustration due to the major effect of COVID-19 pandemic in our lives. But amidst these trying times, we see glimmers of hope, and we witness people rising from these trials, holding on to their faith. In this book, Wil chronicles his experiences when he unexpectedly found himself stranded in the Benedictine Abbey of the Transfiguration in Malaybalay, Bukidnon at the height of the pandemic. As he shares his personal journey with us, we are also invited to reflect on our personal experiences and journey of faith. Sometimes, life is really a mystery. We are put on unexpected situations together with unexpected people, and there we find God. Accidental Monk is the kind of book that we need to read at this time. It inspires, it gives hope, it invites us to pray, it ignites our desires to encounter God. Thank you for joining us today in our online launch of the book. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. For the invocation, we welcome Father Victor Baltasar, S.J.
Magandang araw po. Ako po si Father Vic Baltasar at nahilingan po ako ni Sir Wil Hernandez na pamunuan tayo sa isang invocation. Heavenly Father, on the day we celebrated last year, the feast of the Annunciation to Our Lady of your Son's coming, it also became clearer to Wil Hernandez that options for his travel back to the USA from Malaybalay, Bukidnon were getting thinner by the day. Yet, somehow, you quickened his heart with the Thomas Merton prayer that is all too familiar to him, whose life work in spirituality involves constant dialogue with a man who also loved Merton dearly, that is, Henry Nouwen. The prayer was a good entry for Wil into the journey that he says made of him an accidental monk. And I quote, "My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore will I trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone." More than a year ago today, Wil entered into this inner journey, into his inner monastery, if you will, and allowed the monks of Malaybalay and his God to nurture him into transfiguration from a distracted and quick-moving mind to a more stable, focused consciousness. from a heart filled with many and passionately good desires, to a heart that knows surrender and obedience. So much so that Will brought home with him 2 months later a new heart and a new person who can contemplate and embrace the sacred in the ordinary. May we who prayerfully read through his chronicle in the book to be launched today be granted the same cluster of contemplative gifts that Will received in those first faithful months of the pandemic. May these gifts help us to continue to navigate the continuing crisis called COVID. And with such contemplative gifts, may we draw from the lights and shadows of this COVID crisis and surrender ourselves into communion with God and our community, who never leave anyone to face his or her perils alone. This we ask through the powerful name of our risen Lord, the wellspring of all consolation. Amen.
Father Victor, thank you for the enlightening invocation. Let us now watch the Dear Abbey video highlighting the stay of Wil Hernandez at the Benedictine Abbey of the Transfiguration in Malaybalay, Bukidnon.
As the morning dawns, we behold your beauty stretched across the sky with each new day. Your great faithfulness written in the crimson, mercy new and grace that knows no end. Our lives are filled and overflow with all the favor we've been shown. The splendor and the radiance of your love, we behold your majesty, the beauty of our sovereign King. Your banner spreading over all the earth. As the evening falls, we recount your goodness, the blessings of your presence in our lives. And with the stars above that no one could number, we sing out the greatness of your name. Our lives are filled and overflow with all the favor we've been shown. The splendor and the radiance of your love, we behold your majesty, the beauty of our sovereign King. Your banner spreading over all the earth. How wide, how long, how high, how deep, the fullness of your love, the fullness of your love. How wide, how long, how high, the measure of the fullness of your love.
Hi, I'm Jacob Ching of the Claretian Missionaries, Director of the Claretian Publications. We have been in the publishing ministry for 40 years and have published more than 2,000 titles. And we've noticed that in every title that we have published, there is a story behind the book that could not be found on the pages. Welcome to Between the Pages, an in-depth look on the author and the story behind the book that can only be found between the pages.
Just exactly how do we live out our spirituality in the here and now, in this present moment, in the ordinariness of our mundane existence, wherever we are, however we are, and in whatever situation we find ourselves in, with or without the reality of a pandemic. I think that I have sufficiently theorized all these questions in my mind before, until I found myself stranded for 2.5 months in the southern part of the Philippines, and of all places, in a monastery at the Abbey of Transfiguration in Malaybalay, Bukidnon, in the company of 12 monks. And there, in that monastery, I faced and confronted head-on what it means to really practice what Jean-Pierre de Caussade refers to as the sacrament of the present moment. When finally I was able to return to the United States in Los Angeles, where I live, I tried chronicling and journaling my experience, including all of the struggles I went through. And as much as it would interest people to have an inside look of what monastic life is all about, the one thing that really propelled me to recount and write about my experience is to address this one overarching question. How do we live out a spirituality of everyday life? This is Wil Hernandez, the author of Accidental Monk, a chronicle of struggle, faith, and surrender, published by Claretian Publications.
To introduce the author, let's give the floor to Miss Nina Lau Branson.
Hi, I'm Nina Lau Branson, zooming in from Pasadena, California. I am on staff with CenterQuest, where Wil is the founder, president, and executive director. CenterQuest, CQ, is an ecumenical hub for the study and practice of Christian spirituality, which hosts a School of Spiritual Direction hybrid program, which is international in its thrust and global in its reach. I serve as the director for our CQ SSD mentoring program, and I have the privilege of working very closely with Wil and sharing his vision for CQ Asia. I have the honor of introducing to you the author of the book we are officially launching today, Accidental Monk. Wil Hernandez was born and raised in the Philippines. Prior to coming to the U.S. for graduate studies, he served full-time with an international interdenominational parachurch organization for 18 years. He graduated with a PhD at Fuller Theological Seminary, with additional studies at the University of Notre Dame and Loyola Marymount University. A trained counselor and spiritual director, Wil devotes a big part of his time to companioning others in their spiritual journey. in addition to teaching courses and conducting retreats and seminars focusing on the spirituality of Henry Nouwen in both Catholic and Protestant institutions across the U.S. and globally. He is the author of a trilogy of Nouwen, plus another recent title called Mere Spirituality, The Spiritual Life According to Henry Nouwen. A Benedictine Oblate of St. Andrew's Abbey in Guillermo, California, Wil also serves as a lector and lay Eucharistic minister at St. James Church in South Pasadena, California. Married to Juliet for 36 years now, they reside in Arcadia, California. They have 2 adult sons, Jonathan and David. As I've previously mentioned, Wil has written a total of 4 books in the U.S., all locally published by St. Paul's in the Philippines, but they are all focused on the person of Henry Nouwen. Never before has he written a book about himself and his own spirituality. Last year, in the midst of the global pandemic, Wil found himself stranded in an unlikely place, the Benedictine Abbey of the Transfiguration in the Philippines. There, in the company of 12 monks, he became immersed in the rhythm of monastic life, which has challenged and sustained him in the midst of uncertainties. Thus, Accidental Monk came to be. Wil left late in January 2019 for a planned 3-month trip through Asia. He would send texts and emails back to a group of us, chronicling his journey, talking about the amazing people he met and the privilege he had of teaching and leading retreats around Henry Nouwen. As time went on, it also included a number of narrow escapes from places right before a COVID lockdown, until he returned to the Philippines and landed at the Benedictine Abbey of the Transfiguration. Join me in welcoming our accidental monk, Wil Hernandez.
Thank you for that gracious introduction, Nina. Folks, I bring you greetings from Southern California, where I live. In fact, I am zooming in right now here in Arcadia, here in our CenterQuest office. CenterQuest, or CQ for short, is the organization that both Nina and I are involved in. In fact, I serve as the executive director of CenterQuest, an ecumenical hub for the study and practice of Christian spirituality, which hosts a hybrid school of spiritual direction training program. CQ Resources is also the original publisher of this book, Accidental Monk, which we are, for the first time, officially launching in the Philippines, courtesy of Claretian Publications, Claretian Communications publication. I am thrilled that you have taken the time out to be with us and to join us for this special occasion. Those of you who are zooming us in and zooming in with us, rather, and are watching via the YouTube channel or Facebook pages, I'm glad that we can be together for this occasion. To tell you the truth, I never really set out to write a journal or a diary. To begin with, I'm not a journaler by nature. I wrote that on the preface of the book. It was not in my plan. While there for 2.5 months at the Abbey of the Transfiguration, stranded, stuck with the 12 monks that I was living with at the time, it never occurred to me to document what was happening. Well, the one thing I did though, which I never even planned on doing as well, was I never failed to post each day on Facebook photos, quotes, and just about anything that was happening to me. In a sense, Facebook became my outlet to process all that was going on. And when I came back, finally, after about like 5 attempts to try and fly back to Los Angeles, when I finally got back towards the end of May, I felt this urge. Maybe you can call it an inner summons or calling to start recounting all that God has done over that period of time. And believe it or not, but I started writing like early part of June. By mid-July, I was done with the first draft. Now that's pretty remarkable in the sense that I was very busy. As soon as I got back, I was immersed in a lot of work with CenterQuest. But I had this unexplainable surge of energy. I was just excited about trying to recall and reminisce my whole experience. And I'm very thankful for the monks of the Abbey, more particularly to the Abbot Ed Africa, because I bounced to him the idea which he supported all the way. We were texting left and right, and I was interviewing the monks to make sure I've got the facts straight and all that. So it was like endless texting back and forth while I was trying to recapture my experience throughout those 2 months. And looking back, after I had finished the first draft, I felt like, wow, this is really worth pursuing. I don't know what will come out of it exactly, but deep inside my heart, I knew that God was calling me to proceed and to do that. And I am very thankful for a friend of mine, his name is Daniel, who volunteered to actually facilitate the publication process for me. See, I didn't want to go through traditional publishing because I didn't want to have to wait for like 2 years before this will come to fruition. And also, I wanted to use a lot of the photos that I took while there. I wanted a diary that would be, in a sense, reinforced by photographs here and there. And very few publications would be willing to do just that. And so I explored all kinds of different publications until finally we decided CenterQuest will publish it ourselves. But in my heart of hearts, I was like thinking, I am wishing and praying, I have been wishing and praying that a local publisher will pick it up and publish it in Asia and the Philippines. And I have Claretian Publications to thank. I'd like to thank Father Jay for welcoming this prospect, this opportunity. It's a joy to be able to work with the Claretian folks, with Bob Laurio and Aggie Inocencio, Geraldine, and all the other folks that I've had the privilege of collaborating just to ensure that this book gets published there in the Philippines. Okay. I'm also very thankful to my good friend Joel Dasalia, who is stationed in Orlando, Florida. He was the one responsible for designing my trilogy on Nauen, on Henry Nauen. I'd like to make special mention of Joel Dasalia, who was responsible for designing the book covers for my trilogy on Henry Nauen, which was published originally here in the States by Paul's Press and locally by St. Paul's Philippines. And he excitedly and enthusiastically volunteered to be the one designing the book cover for Accidental Monk. But not only that, he actually was the one who designed the interior part of the book, the format, the layout, the text, the logos, everything. So I'm very grateful for the investment of time, energy, and effort, and his patience in ensuring that we had this beautiful finished product because of his expertise and his commitment to see this book come to fruition. You know, when I think about this book, I really have, I would call maybe a threefold thrust why I became convinced that it's worth pursuing the project. First of all, because of my experience at the Abbey, having been immersed in monastic life and being initiated into this whole monastic rhythm. As an oblate, a Benedictine oblate myself, I really want to promote Benedictine core values, the values of stability, of obedience and conversion. And most particularly, I want to promote this whole concept of a spirituality of everyday life or everyday spirituality, something that I've theorized for a long, long time, but learned the hard way, I should say, to flesh out the implications of what that means, to live out your life with God in the here and now, in the ordinariness of our mundane existence. So that's the first and foremost thing that's propelling me to really pursue this project, to advance the spirituality of the Benedictines that I feel can bless a wider readership. But also, as some of you already know, I am a person who has committed myself to the propagation of the enduring spiritual legacy of Henry Nouwen, whom I call my patron saint. He is probably one of the best spiritual writers of the last century, next only to the famed Trappist monk by the name of Thomas Merton. And I have written 4 books on Nouwen, like I said, all of which were published locally by St. Paul's. And yet, this book is unique and it's different. Different in the sense that, well, I've written about Nouwen, I've written about somebody else, but this is the very first time that I have talked about myself. I have risked going on record to talk about my own experience. In many ways, I was willing to out myself to the world and openly, transparently talk about my own struggles, as well as my own little victories and triumphs. So in many ways, it's a very special endeavor for me to be able to share myself, my life, to people who are willing to listen and hopefully be blessed as a result of me openly sharing my own vulnerabilities and my own all of that, the struggles and the victories that came with the whole package, my whole experience. And if you read the book, you will see the influence of Henry Nouwen on the pages of my writings, directly and indirectly, because he has so impacted my life. And now I've seen how it has really penetrated my perspective, my thinking, at such time when, I was at a loss, wondering what God must be doing in my own life. In many ways, Henry Nouwen companioned me silently, quietly, while I was immersed in this, in a sense, interlude, while I was in the middle of this divine interruption. So, aside from promoting Benedictine spirituality, I'm also, in a sense, advancing what I feel is bound to also bless the readers, the insights of Henry Nouwen when it comes to our spiritual life. And then thirdly, I have been very open about the fact that in terms of my ministry work, my world revolves around CenterQuest. So despite the fact that I was several thousand miles away from where I live, where I work, I had to continue on. And thank God for technology. And like I mentioned earlier, our work is hybrid. It's a combination of residential and online. So it worked out well. But despite the fact that I was removed and distanced from where the action is, so to speak, where we're situated here in the United States, it's just incredible that I was able to stay connected with what was going on and kept moving on with what I strongly felt God was calling us to do and to pursue. And so in many ways, I dedicate this book towards our current cohort 5, who are undergoing our training program, because it was during my strandedness at the Abbey that we were forming this new cohort, which turned out to be our largest cohort to date. Can you imagine that in the middle or at the height of the pandemic, God handpicked a whole bunch of people, a very diverse group of people from all over the world, to compose our current cohort, who are training to become spiritual companions for others on their journey. So again, these three things were, in a sense, it came about. I mean, again, I didn't deliberately plan to do that, but what made this book special is the fact that I was able to, in a sense, address these three different dimensions of my life that I want to promote. Benedictine spirituality and a spirituality of everyday life, as well as on the side, an inside look or a peek into the monastic life, the monastic rhythm, and the humanity of the monks that I've been able to get to know and interact with and live with. So whether you're familiar with Benedictine spirituality or monasticism, it doesn't matter. It'll give you a good glimpse, almost like a front row seat, to be able to access, their own way of living out the so-called spirituality of everyday life. It was such a blessing for me to be able to experience it firsthand throughout my stay at the monastery, at the Abbey. And I'm very thankful. In many ways, they were stuck with me and I was stuck with them. I was living in the cloister. I was living inside the monastery enclosure. And so I was really literally immersed into the rhythm of it all, which was new to me in many ways. But it's something that I have come to really, really thoroughly appreciate all throughout the duration of my stay at the Abbey. I'm praying and I'm wishing in my heart of hearts that this book will be a source of blessing to whoever will lay their hands on the book and read it. Not too long ago, I received a text from one of the readers. He wants to, stay unnamed, and I can appreciate that. But he texted me only to share with me that as a result of reading the book, that fire that was snuffed out along the way through his journey, his desire to serve God and pursue a religious vocation, it's like it's being rekindled or resurrected in his heart. His desire has come alive even more as a result of that, and he was asking for prayer that God will crystallize in his mind what God would have him do, because it's like it's really triggering something in him. But that's just one of the texts or emails that I have received. I mean, I can go on and on. as a result of the publication of the book, I have received phone calls, emails, texts, messages of people telling me, thanks for writing this book. Thanks for sharing your heart and bearing your own struggle. And thank you for allowing us to connect with you and relate with your own experience. And so that's my desire, that it will continue to speak to where people are at, recognizing that this is really, our ordination, if you will, to the ordinary. This is our life in the here and now, practicing what Jean-Pierre de Caussade calls the sacrament of the present moment. Folks, I'm very thankful that what I had envisioned and dreamt about, came true. And again, I want to thank Claritian for their willingness to really welcome this prospect of publishing this book. And my continuing prayer, of course, like I already said, the one continuing desire and prayer of my heart is that God will use this book to bless many more people who encounter God through the pages of this book and actually engage in a deepening experience of their life with God as a result. Folks, thank you so very much for joining me for this launch, and I'm really praying that God would bless all our efforts together, that in all things God may be glorified. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that inspiring message, Will. Let's listen to Mr. Mark Beasley for a special song number.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Beasley. It's great to be with you on Zoom. I'm a participant in CenterQuest School of Spiritual Direction, and I'd like to share a song that I've composed, and I'd like to dedicate it to you, Will, for the launch of your book.
Everything I could ever need, every longing in my heart, planted in me from the start, every hope I hold for what my life will be, everything I could ever see, anything I could ever dream, every hunger, every thirst, to this moment from the first, all are leading me to where my searching ends. For you are all my heart is really longing for, and you are all my soul will ever need. You are all the meaning I am searching for, and you are all that satisfies the deepest part of me. Any peace I could could ever find, every grace I could ever need, every pleasure that won't pass, every treasure that will last, all are waiting for me at my journey's end. For you are all my heart is really longing for, and you are all my soul will ever need. You are all the meaning I am searching for, and you are all that satisfies the deepest part. For you are all my heart is really longing for, and you are all my soul will ever need. You are all the meaning I am searching for, and you are all that satisfies the deepest part of me. You satisfy the deepest part of me. You satisfy the deepest part of me. Will, again, congratulations on the launch of the Asian Philippine edition of Accidental Monk.
Thank you for the heartwarming song number, Mark. Let's now hear what the readers say about the book Accidental Monk.
Greetings from the Philippines. I'm holding in my hand right here an engaging book that we're all endorsing for you to read. I found this Accidental Monk by good friend Dr. Wil Hernandez to be one that uplifted my spirits during this time of the pandemic. A year after this pandemic hit us here in the Philippines, I think we've all learned some lessons from faith to surrender, to our own issues of control and wanting to just be on top of things, to discerning what it is that the Lord is trying to tell us, to submit, to have faith, to have the grace and the wherewithal, because He's truly in control. And He gives us that opportunity to be with Him as we grapple daily what the Lord means by all these. Sometimes it's not quite apparent, but the journey is the one that's important. And Will transforms us with his writing, his deeristic entries in this wonderful book. It's hard to put down, I can assure you. And I want to encourage you to take time to read it, especially if you have many times during this pandemic that you're practically doing nothing and just simply waiting. Wait in God with this book. I do highly endorse it.
Accidental Monk will make us resonate with Will's struggles in ordinary but common everyday matters. It's like God was teasing him into taming, into teaching him what it's like to deepen this relationship when things are so unpredictable and uncontrollable. And so it brings us in to that kind of experience. And Although he teaches about Benedictine values, core Benedictine values, he was really made to experience this and to deepen this further as experienced by him. It's really wonderful read and it's fun.
Reading Wil's book bring into focus, in my opinion, what does it mean to find God in the mundane and the ordinary? Against the backdrop of an extraordinary place, a monastery, which to most of us is like an ivory tower, Wil, as it were, has torn down the veil. He gave us a glimpse of the experience of the sacred and the mundane. He has demysticized the cloistered. But the final embodiment of finding God in the ordinary is described by Wil in his Black Saturday narrative, when hearing all the bad news of the day and ending his nights offering the liturgy of the Eucharist, he found time to celebrate his momentous day by partaking of an ordinary frozen avocado concoction with whipped cream and condensed milk, and eating alone in the monk's kitchen to his heart's delight. He found his heart light and full. Indeed, celebration, or joy for that matter, is only possible if we find God in everything, the ordinary, extraordinary, the mundane, and even accidental events in our lives. Thanks, Father Wil, for sharing your experience.
If you are looking for a spiritual companion while in solitude, or struggling with the loss of control during these times of uncertainties, allow yourself to be accompanied by the book Accidental Monk by Wil Hernandez. It felt surreal at one point while reading it because Wil's gift of storytelling made me feel like as if he was narrating his powerful and personal story in person. And the most rewarding part of it was getting a sense of that ever gentle, mysterious, and playful presence of God. So I hope when you read it, you also get a sense of being intimate with God and maybe learning more about how Wil's struggles between confusion and enlightenment, control and surrender, isolation and communion can mirror to us how the Lord can transform our ordinary experiences, even the worst ones, into a powerful and life-changing encounter with God.
Nothing happens by chance, and every good thing that happens is God's will. I find the book of Wil, Accidental Monk, an expression of God's will. Everything that happened to him during the first months of pandemic, while stranded in the Benedictine monastery in Balay-Balay, Bukidnon, was in God's perfect timing. God made Wil a monk for that period of time. Accidentally, yes, because of the lockdown that was brought about by COVID-19. But God allowed him to become an instant monk for 2.5 months, for God wanted him to write a book about his personal and intimate memoir with the divine while struggling and waiting for his return back home. Friends, I invite you to read this book, Accidental Monk. You will surely find his God, a God who has a lot of humor, wonder, and surprises.
Accidental Monk, a journal genre book, is a living record of how Wil making and finding meanings of his adventurous days in the Transfiguration Benedictine Monastery in the Philippines. In general, we can see two storylines in it: the life and the struggles of the real monks, and the inner life and works of Wil as an accidental monk, each in their humanity, but both shows us their daily spirituality, the movement in vulnerability and authenticity. Most of Wil's stories are humorous and yet sacred. precious, and inspiring. I planned to skim it, but then I found myself can't stop reading it. So, order some copy and read it with your friends. You all will love it.
Wil Hernandez, in his book The Accidental Monk, beautifully pulls the curtains for us of what happens behind monastic walls from the perspective of a layperson. And what really resonated with me, and Will did a beautiful job of allowing us to see the daily rhythm of the monastic community. But what speaks to me is this section, particularly on praying the divine hours, because the lives of the monks revolve around this work of prayer, and how Will speaks about how the word that we repeat, becomes for us almost like a seed that goes within, and when needed, God pulls that out and speaks to us the word that we pray to Him through the Psalms and through the readings in the Canticle. So for me, that was a powerful invitation of a monastic life that could be lived out even in the day-to-day mundane reality of a non-monastic person. So really encourage you to read The Accidental Monk and to find yourselves immersed in the life and in the story, in the values, in the invitations of the monastic community as Wil Hernandez experienced it.
Dom Will was destined to be with the monks at the Abbey of Transfiguration for a mission at the start of the pandemic. His experience of 2 months and 10 days led him to proclaim to the whole world the importance of Benedictine monastic vows and its core values of obedience, stability, conversatio morum or fidelity to monastic life, silence, prayer, in line with the letter of St. Paul to the Colossians. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. This book is a treasure, and He wants you to get hold of it because He did it as God's perfect will.
Hi, I'm Rod Yasser Jr. of the Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals. I really like books written by Will. They offer great insights, give you inspiration, and a deeper understanding of the topics he writes about. But Accidental Monk is a completely different thing. Here, Brother Will gave us a front row seat advantage as he narrates his unique experience of how it is to live the life of the monks in the Benedictine Abbey of the Transfiguration in Malaybalay City, Bukidnon, in the Philippines. In this book, Brother Will departs from his scholarly way of writing to share with us his experience in a very candid and at times hilarious way while living in the Benedictine Abbey. Accidental Monk opened the curtains and revealed to us both the down-to-earth simplicity and the deep spirituality of the monks that inhabit the abbey, in a way only a Wil Hernandez can narrate. And so I encourage you to get a copy of this book. Once you start reading, it is hard to put this down.
Accidental Monk was a book I couldn't put down. It was so many things: meditative, vulnerable, poignant, inspiring, enlightening, so many layers. Will's surrender to his unplanned immersion in monastic community life led me to reflect on the beauty and the healing balm he found in the daily rhythms of the monks' cloistered lives. Will has shone the light on God's love and abiding presence, ordering the small, hidden, ordinary circumstances of our lives.
Accidental Monk is such an incredible and precious diary of struggle, faith, and surrender. In a witty, humorous, and down-to-earth manner, Wil Hernandez shows how by simply being present to life, one day at a time, we too can also become accidental monks. from his exciting adventures being stuck in the Abbey of the Transfiguration to the frustrating and risky travels across COVID-19 hit countries in Asia. Wil Hernandez shows how we too can live a full life just by simply being present and open to what God has to offer to us. Reading Accidental Monk was really a source of comfort for me in my daily life because I managed to be connected with my own vulnerabilities. And I believe that you too, in reading Accidental Monk, will find in it a source of companioning and comfort, especially in these trying times.
This book is a must read. For someone who is fond of reading diaries and journals, I found myself excited to read this book. Coming from Mindanao myself, having grown up there and having visited Bukidnon, where the Monastery of Transfiguration is located, it was not difficult for me to imagine the setting of Dr. Wil's story. I received this book as a gift, not only for myself, but for every one of us who is on a journey towards the center. This is a book that reminds us of the beauty in the ordinary, the gift of today and the present moment, the blessing of divine interruption, and the gift of oneself. This is Dr. Will's story about being present to self, God, others, and creation, which he shares to us. This is a sacred story.
Today we launched a book entitled Accidental Monk, written by our good friend, Wil Hernandez. If you haven't read it yet, I advise that you do, because I think it embodies the magnificence of the Abbey of the Transfiguration, complete with skies above. And the author describes it as magically enchanting. Congratulations to Wil Hernandez for a scintillating portrayal of the Abbey, its monks, and the ambience, and his stay, which enriched him, I think. In his eloquence with words, Wil speaks of the spirituality and unparalleled hospitality of the Benedictine monks, their patience, their obedience, and their dedication, even their vulnerabilities. The highlight of the book for me was in its chief message of surrender, our ultimate decision to fully trust God no matter what. It not only provides an insight, but more so an impetus for one's surrender to God. Take a copy of the book. It's a good bedside book. It's a good coffee table book, but it's a good book. It was excellently written, and you can really relate to it. Believe me, I think it's one of Wil Hernandez's best books. So go get it.
Hello, greetings from Manila. It was encouraging to have read Wil's book, The Accidental Monk. It was refreshingly Filipino. From his experience of emptying his bladder on the side of the road, to many of his gastronomic delights such as tortang talong, halo-halo, Pinoy ice cream, and Jollibee. It is also intriguingly Catholic. As a Protestant, reading Wil's profound knowledge about Benedictine spirituality is very, very encouraging. And also his nagging infatuation with converting to Catholicism overhauls some of my theological assumptions. Wil also gave me a private tour of the monastic life. So I have to Google several terms like refectory, lauds, vesper, and compline. But more than the drama of being serendipitously stranded in a place filled with natural beauty and fascinating simplicity, Wil's diary invited me to revisit my own need for solitude and silence. And he also nudged me, again, as always, towards a brand of spirituality that delights in the presence of the one whose love never fails, through the good times and the bad times. Thank you, Wil, for sharing your heart, sharing your life once again. Congratulations, and more power to you and to your ministries. God bless you.
Thank you all for the wonderful book reviews. Truly, Wil's monastic encounter taught us to fully surrender ourselves to God. The open forum will start in a while. You may type in your questions at the chat box. Thank you.
I am used to a rhythm of praying the hours at certain times of the day. And so that has been imbibed in me already. So entering into the monastic rhythm was not a huge leap for me. But I have to confess, for the most part, I do the morning prayer and usually the Vespers. But to do the morning prayer, the Mass, the Vespers, the Compline, all of that, every day in, day out, is quite a change for me. So it sort of like really deepened my appreciation to the fixed hour prayer, the value of the fixed hour prayer. So yeah, that has probably my exposure as a Benedictine oblate has deepened my appreciation to commit myself to more consistently towards this end.
Thank you, Will. Next question from Mark of Philadelphia. He asks, could you tell us about a particular gifted moment in your stay at the Abbey?
I have to say, I did mention about this that I had discovered what I would call photo divina. I, I took, I mean, I've taken for granted, like my iPhone. I would take pictures here and there, but well, I have to confess, out of boredom, I had nothing much to do. I started really taking pictures, but this time around more intentionally and more contemplatively. So this was a gift in and of itself to be able to like frame the shots and really document them. So it's something that I realize, oh my gosh, I think I love doing this. I love documenting not just sceneries and all that, but events and everything that comes to mind in pictures, in photos. So that's probably one of the greatest gifts I have received while there.
Thank you very much. Another question from Noel Kabigting. He asked, what is an aspect of that stay in the monastery that is still alive in you today?
I have to say, just again, the appreciation of nature. I am not an outdoor person. I'm more of an indoor person. I can just work on my desk like all day long. Not that I don't appreciate outdoors or nature, it's not natural for me, but I mean, being enchanted by the surroundings, the place, I had no choice but to really gravitate towards the outdoors for the most part. Just the other day, just for my own sanity's sake, I went out of my office and went to the arboretum and spent the whole afternoon just walking around and strolling around, just appreciating plants and flowers and the blooms and everything else. And then the other day too, I went back to Serra Retreat Center up in Malibu, which is one of my favorite retreat centers here in California, just for a day, to spend the day again roaming around and just literally, as the cliche goes, smelling the flowers. So that has stayed with me. Just the love for God's created order and nature.
Thank you, Will. Another question from Nina Lau Branson. She asks, is there an aspect of monastic life that you particularly miss and wish you could return to?
If I were to really be completely honest, eating regularly. Like I usually like skip breakfast or even dinner and all that. But part of the monastic rhythm is I was like eating morning, noontime. But gosh, being back in the Philippines and tasting all the fresh fishes that I've never tasted here in LA, I really miss that. I have to confess. I mean, just the regularity of feasting, I should say. And I really was amply blessed while I was there in terms of, in terms of this aspect. So I'm just being very honest.
We have a question from one of our cross-posted Facebook page. Mary Ann Magtalas asks, Will, what does surrender feel like?
Oh boy. Surrender, as many of you probably will attest to it, is always a struggle. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there have been many, many times when, deep inside I was really rebelling because I felt like I was so powerless to do anything in terms of what I wanted to do. And I mean, just the whole idea of letting go in and of itself is really a spiritual practice, a discipline I've had to learn over and over and over again.
Thank you very much. Our one from Mayan Mijares of Quezon City. She asks, if you were given another opportunity to be in a similar situation, would you do it all over again?
Anytime.
Wow. And she continues to ask, why would you do it again?
Come again, Father J.
She asks, why would you do it again if you are if you want to do it again?
I lead a very busy life and I thrive in preoccupied existence. My hands are always full. So I always welcome the opportunity, whether it's forced or providential in many ways, to really just be alone and to really withdraw and disengage. A lot of people think I'm really highly extroverted, but deep inside, I'm actually introverted. I really, draw my energy from the inside. I cannot just go on expending all of my energy, kind of like doing. I really needed those times when I can very intentionally disengage and just be by myself or just enjoy things I normally don't enjoy because I am preoccupied by a million and other things. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's the last question I have on the chat. Wait. Somebody just raised another question. How did you feel when it was time to say goodbye to the monks and your time as the accidental monk came to an end? That is from Abby.
Henry Nouwen always says that it's very possible for joy and sorrow for, to coexist. And in my heart of hearts, of course, I was relieved. I was joyful. I'm finally going home. But of course, I was simultaneously feeling very sad because I've cherished the entire experience. So it was a mixture, I would say, as cliche as it may sound. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Will. Again, that's our last question on the chat box. And thank you, everyone, for joining us, especially the questions that you have raised for our book launch. Yes, yes. So we'd like to thank all of you for joining us this day in this virtual book launch of Wil Hernandez's book. This is The Accidental Monk. But before we'll let you go, and before we'll have the final prayer, because normally after the final prayer, everybody logs out, we wish to have a Zoom feed with you. So we would like to ask you to switch on all your cameras, because our tech people will be taking a photo of all of us here this day. Can we do that? Can we ask everybody to switch on now your cameras as we take a Zoom feed during this book launch? Thank you. Okay, ready? Let me see if you're all up. Okay, let's wear your most sweetest smile. At the count of 3, we'll take a photo. 1, 2, 3. A Zoom feed. And the next page. 1, 2, 3. A Zoom feed. Okay. And another page. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tech, for the photos. Again, I am Jacob Ching. I'm the director of the Clarician Publications. We were not accidental publishers. When we got the publishing, the manuscript of Will, we were really looking for a manuscript that talks about spiritual life of the lay. Because when we look at spiritual life, we always look at the religious, the ordained, the hierarchy, and yet we were asking ourselves, this book would truly help those, especially now that they're all quarantined, to find that cloister in them, to find that monastery in their own respective homes, and that every time, every day would be a grace-filled day. I always like the words used by Will, that there will always be that divine inspiration that happens every day. And we have to always keep ourselves in tune for God's grace in our life. Will, thank you very much for entrusting us the manuscript of your book. It is with great joy that the book is now out, and you could purchase it in several online shops that we have. We posted that at the beginning of the book launch. Those of you who'd like to get hold of a copy, it is now available for online shopping. Also, would like me to thank several participants. Our participants this day, we have from USA, Singapore, Ireland, Canada, London, Taiwan, and Puerto Rico. Thank you very much for joining us in this time. I know you have several time differences and you are with us this afternoon, this day, sorry. We'd like also to thank the different Facebook cross posts that we have. The Millennial Catholics, Hugot Seminarista, Biyahe ni Kuya Carlo. Of course, we'd like to thank Center Quest, Questers Community, and Noven Legacy Associates, who allowed us to cross-post this program in their different Facebook pages. One thing that I've enjoyed when reading the book is to get a feel of a fifth gospel in the life of a monk, that it could only be done when you live their life. Father Abbot Edgardo Africa, in his introduction, really showed the wonderful battles that Will has to go through to surrender his faith in those times that he was stranded, the struggles, the faith, the life that he has. Again, Will, thank you very much for allowing us to publish the book. And of course, we'd like to thank all of you again for joining us this day for the book, this virtual book launch of The Accidental Monk. Now we will close our launch with a prayer, and we will ask Father Steve Coffey, OSB Camaldolis. Father Steve is with the Monastery of the Risen Christ in San Luis Obispo, California, and is affiliated with the Camaldolese and Big Sur, California. He is part of the residency speakers pool and online instructor of the module of theological reflection for CenterQuest School of Spiritual Direction. Again, Father Steve.
Thank you. At many of the gatherings that Wil does for CenterQuest, we end with Compline. And that's appropriate for us here in California. But for you in the Philippines, it's not night yet. So we'll do an adaptation of Compline. It will include a psalm and then a prayer of blessing. And so we remember that we're in God's holy presence. Those who dwell in the shelter of infinite light, who abide in the wings of infinite love, will raise their voices in praise. My refuge and my strength, in you alone will I trust. For you deliver me from the webs of fear, from all that separates and divides. You protect me as an eagle shields its young. Your faithfulness is sure, like an arrow set upon the mark. I will not fear the shadows of the night, nor the confusion that comes by day, nor the dreams that awaken me from sleep, nor the daily changes that life brings. Though 1,000 may deride this radical trust, 10,000 laugh as I seek to do your will. Yes, will I surrender myself to you, abandoning myself into your hands without reserve. For you have set your angels to watch over me, to guide me in all my ways. On their hands they will bear me up, lest I dash my foot against a stone. Though I walk among those who roar like the lion, or are as stealthy as the adder, in your strength will I be saved. Because you cleave to me in love, I will deliver you. I will protect you who call upon my name. When you call to me, I will answer you. I will be with you in times of trouble. I will rescue you and reverence your life. All through the years will I dwell in your heart as loving companion presence forever. And now let us pray for all of those who will be reading the book, Accidental Monk. Lord God, whose blessings reach to the ends of the earth, you show us your love in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, whom we call Savior and Lord. Confirm us in our common faith, that we may walk together with you and one another. Send your blessing upon the readers of this book, that what has begun in the Spirit may be brought to completion by your power. To you be glory and honor, now and forever.
Amen.
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 Thank you very much, Father Steve. Before we let you go, we will allow the author some final thoughts that he might like to share with us. Wil?
Father Jay, thank you so much. I really sincerely appreciate those of you out of your busy lives to have taken time out to join us. Those of you who registered for the live Zoom, but those of you who are watching us through the YouTube channel, the Facebook pages, we're simultaneously live streaming this in a number of different, in a sense, outlets. So I really, really appreciate all your encouragement, all your support. I'd like once again to extend my appreciation to all the monks of the Abbey of the Transfiguration, most especially the abbot himself, Father Ed Africa for his support and for making this book possible. Folks, thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Clarician, for taking the risk and welcoming this the publication of this book. So I'm a grateful person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Will. Again, everybody, thank you very much for joining us this day. Blessed day to all of you.